What's up, y'all? It's your girl, Apollonia Cross, and today on Plan and Chat, we are going to be talking about how to start planning your exit into mompreneurship. A lot of us moms started our businesses or start our business as a side hustle, and while we're working our job and raising the kids, and we want to get out of that daily grind. And so I wanted to bring on my friend Rebecca, who's also a financial coach, to talk more about how she was able to do that for herself and pursue her financial coaching business full time. So, without further ado, let me go ahead and bring her on to the chat. And if you are a new person to Plan and Chat, what we do here is talk about all things motherhood, self-care, and entrepreneurship, and how to find ways to better manage that so we can elevate and grow and develop into the women that we are supposed to be. And so let me go ahead and bring Rebecca on.
Hey, Apollonia, how are you?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. It is Saturday and it is early in the morning. So how are you feeling?
Girl, I mean, it was a struggle. It was the struggle bus this morning just to get to this point. So I'm calling this a success.
Right. Absolutely. And that's so funny how that happens because I was feeling it too.
It's just real life.
Right. It's the roller coaster of mompreneurship. And so that's why I wanted to bring you on because, as you know, like even when you choose to make this decision to become a mompreneur, there is the roller coaster. It almost kind of feels like the roller coaster from hell, depending on how you look at it, right?
It really, yes. Yeah. And for me, really kind of what solidified my transition is because before becoming a mompreneur, I was in the industry that I was in for 15 years. Yeah. And so it was like that had kind of become a little bit of my identity. And, I started when I was in my early 20s. So I was a young kid and I basically grew into an adult in the industry that I was in, which was child nutrition for public schools. And I had worked my way up from entry level all the way to a director position. And when I started making that transition to, entrepreneurship, I quickly realized that I didn't love my W-2 job anymore. Right. And I think that for me was kind of like, that's when I realized, okay, it's time to make this jump.
Right. Yeah, and that's I love that you kind of pointed that out. And so we're kind of just jumping right in, y'all. So as you guys are hopping on, say hello, good morning, what's up, letting us know where you're at in the world. But really quickly, Rebecca, can you just introduce yourself, because I've had you on some other episodes, but for the new people, go ahead and introduce yourself real quick.
Yeah, absolutely. My name's Rebecca. I am the founder of Priority One Financial Coaching. I am the mom of 2 daughters. I have a 4-year-old who just graduated preschool and an 18-month-old. And then my husband is a sheriff's deputy, and he is actually sleeping right now because he's on a graveyard shift. He works graveyards. So to say that my journey into entrepreneurship has been a struggle and a challenge is an understatement. So
right. Well, you and I share the same law enforcement family struggle, so I totally understand. But I'm excited to have you on, and I love our talks anyways, but I really, especially just watching your journey from when we first met and started working together, and then watching you transition from your full-time job into this journey. I love how you had so much, you had a intention, you had a plan, and it wasn't just jump. And I feel like a lot of us kind of jump the gun. I'm that kind of a person to where I get excited about something and I just jump in, and then I'm like freaking out because I didn't realize the water was cold, So so this first question I'm going to ask you is like, what were some of the things that you did and had to think of before leaving your 9-to-5?
Absolutely. And so for me, it kind of all happened organically. So it really started with my husband and I. How I became a financial coach was we actually just started taking a hard look at our own finances. This was about July of 2021. And we had fallen into a pattern that I think most American families find themselves in, where you are basically, even if you make a good income, like you're kind of still living paycheck to paycheck, right? And so, we had racked up about $80,000 in consumer debt. And I was 6 months pregnant with our second daughter at the time. And we just both said, okay, like, hey, we need to change something. And so we did. We started taking a hard look at our money and started managing our money. Created our spending plan, and through it, I'm an analytical person by nature, and so I just kind of like took charge of the whole thing. And so I was reading all the books, Dave Ramsey, Ramit Sethi. I don't know if you've heard of him, but he actually has a Netflix show now.
Yeah.
Like, I've been listening to like so many just like financial education experts over the past couple years, and have kind of like picked and chose like what fits, our lifestyle, and helped us gain control of our money. And so through that, I didn't even realize financial coaching was a thing. And so about a few months in, I told my husband, I was like, I think I can help other people with this. I just don't know what that looks like. Like, I've never heard of somebody, like, I'm not an accountant. I'm not a tax professional. I don't give investment advice. Like, what's that title for how to help somebody with their personal finances? And so I went down the financial coach rabbit hole and figured out like that's kind of where I fit in. And it was a journey from there. It probably took me about a year and a half, almost 2 years to get to the point where I was going to leave my job.
I love that you gave like a realistic perspective, because it wasn't just like you decided you were going to do it and you went ahead and just, what we see some very highly successful people do. They quit their job cold turkey and they, jump off, right? You like actually allowed yourself to do the research, number one, to also have that discussion with your husband. You did take ownership too of that. And that's actually beautiful because he trusted you with that. And that can be challenging for sure. But I love how, again, you mentioned you said 2 years. And I don't think a lot of us really put a lot of efforts or really thought process in giving ourselves that grace to do that before you finally take the jump to not lose your job, but you finally take the jump to let go of your job and pursue it full time. And you said you had a 9-month-old, and yeah, those are some tender years.
Yeah. So like, and in all honesty, had I not had kids, I probably could have done it quicker. But the truth of the matter is that, I had 2 daughters, all, during this time under the age of 3. And my husband was working graveyards this whole time. And so it wasn't an easy road. Like, I had to figure out, I had to be strategic. And that's really what helped us, was getting our finances on track and starting to cut back on those expenses that weren't serving us in the moment. And redirecting that money to, pay for a nanny to come a couple nights a week, so I can have some time to work on my business, kids free, and not with them jumping on me. Because, as well as I do, you and I have sat on many calls when your kids are coming in, my kids are coming in, and it's just like, it's not easy to sit down and try to conduct business when you've got little ones, pulling on your pant legs.
Or screaming and all the things. Yeah, it can be very taxing, but like you said, like, you gave yourself 2 years, right? You did have your kids and all the things, but you also knew some of the things that you needed to have in place before you left. So like, you kind of answered this question, was how long you should give yourself to comfortably and affordably make that transition. You gave yourself 2 years.
Yeah. And so this is kind of what I tell people, because you could you could sit there and say, like, I'm going to wait until we are 100% financially comfortable to make this transition. And in all honesty, you could be waiting a long time. I tell people is like, get yourself close enough to the dock to where you can just make that leap. You don't have to swim as much to get to land. You know what I mean? It's like you get close enough to land where there's enough space where you can either just jump onto that dock or you just have to swim a little bit to get there. But if we sit here and say, like, I'm going to wait until I can just like step off the boat comfortably and safely, it could be a really, really long time. Like sometimes you just have to take a little bit of risk. And that's kind of what I felt we did. Now we did get our finances in line and we did have to cut stuff back. Because we were going from a dual income household down to a one income household. Because when I left my job, I still wasn't profitable with my business. And so we did take a little bit of a risk there. But for me, the trade-off was I had gotten to a point at my job where I was so burnt out and I was so miserable. It was like I wasn't showing up at home being the mom that I needed to be. I wasn't showing up being the wife that I needed to be. And then that meant that I wasn't showing up in my business the way that I needed to be in order for it to grow. And so I had to, and that was a long, hard conversation with my husband and I. And it took us, months. Like we were looking at this months ahead of time. To see like what's that target date that I can, leave my job and we can still be comfortable on one income.
Yeah. And yeah, that is hard because it is hard for the simple fact that, you do get burnout. Like just being an entrepreneur in general, you get burned out because like at least like with the job, there is a consistent paycheck, whether you like it or not and all the things. But you're right. When that starts to really how you're feeling at your job really starts to affect how you show up in everything else, that is definitely where you got to really reevaluate some things. And so one question I wanted to ask you is you talk about making you and your husband set your guys' self up and had to talk about your finances and realign some things. What were the first things that you guys tackled before you made that transition from a dual family income to a single family income?
Our debt, 100%. Our debt was taking literally thousands of dollars away from us each month. It had gotten to the point where we just had so many, we had our vehicle debts, and then on top of just, like credit card debt and student loan debt. And we had purchased season tickets for the San Jose Earthquakes soccer team. And so we had that we were paying off because that was a 3-year contract. And so we just had so much debt that was just stealing from us each month. And so that's what we focused on. Like the whole 2 years was like, we're going to pay off this debt because that's going to create so much margin and so much wiggle room in our day-to-day life. Everything else we can adjust, but the biggest impact was the debt that we were carrying.
Wow. That's huge. Because that's huge. Because like you said, it's taking up a lot of your income, and then that makes you feel really trapped. Like you can't go out and do things and have fun and all of those things. And especially too, if you're starting a business, depending on the type of business, you're going to need funds to go ahead and finance the business. Yep. And so right now, when you transitioned, you and your husband are fully funding and supporting the things that you need for your business, right? You're not having to use credit card or business loans or any of those things.
Correct. Yeah. Nice. We do have a business credit card that we use just for like the ease of transacting. So like we'll use the business credit card to like pay for things we need for the business and then pay it off through our personal fund or our personal bank account, because we found that like the transferring right now of the funds, like when you don't know how much money you need to transfer, each week or each month or whatever, it's just easier to use the business credit card, but we pay it off each month before the due date. So
Nice. Yeah. That was one thing that I started to do because we still have credit card debt and that's still a journey for us. But I'm grateful and thankful that we don't have like the student loans, we don't have a
mhm,
home loan, we have one car loan. So in comparison to what a great majority of a lot of people do have, we don't,
mhm,
thankfully. Um, but I could only imagine with you mentioned the student loan, you mentioned the
yeah.
car loans, not one. Right. And on top of the credit cards and like, yeah, like so you had to do a whole complete financial lifestyle change in order to make this jump.
Mhm.
And that's really important to point out because yeah, you can definitely in today's day and age, there's so many ways that you can absolutely start a business with nothing. However, the time, like you mentioned, first and foremost, it was the time and the mental space that needed to be freed up from the financial debt that you accrued from the lifestyle you were living. So
Mhm.
I feel like that's a really key thing to point out that you said, because I don't think a lot of us really consider or think about that. Nor do we think about like all of the potential business costs that can come with when you have to file a business, uh, getting your LLC if there's this charge there, paying for all of the equipment and things that you might need depending on what you're doing, product reviews, all of the things. So it can totally, it definitely can add up. Um, so one another question that I have for you, like I love this conversation. You're definitely bringing up your husband and all, and I love that. There's definitely a teamwork aspect. So what were some of the conversations in that you guys had to have? Because again, you're talking about you shared a 2-year period before you finally went ahead and made that jump. So what did those conversations really look like for you and your spouse when you were wanting to gain his support in making this transition?
Yeah, I really want to boil down to it again because I didn't I knew what I wanted to do and I wanted to use what I had learned to help other families. I just didn't know what that capacity was. And so really he was kind of my sounding board.
Mm,
And so I just talked to him about it from the get-go, like, hey, like our literally our very first conversation about it was like, I think I can help other families with personal finances based on what we've learned through our journey. And he was like yeah, totally. And then when I decided that, because especially when you're starting a business, and this too as well, is nowadays, because everybody has access to social media and everybody has access to market themselves, you have to figure out a way to make yourself stand out, meaning you really have to niche down hard
yeah.
on who you are marketing to. And so that was like the first thing that I had to figure out is like, who is, I knew financial coaching was still kind of a newer concept. But at the same time, I still need to figure out who am I marketing to. And then when we decided that we were going to market to first responder families, predominantly law enforcement, just because that's our experience. We experienced their like the unique lifestyle struggles, based on the job. And he was like, dude, like nobody's done this before. And
Right.
so from that point on, I think he bought into it because he saw how it our journey changed our life for the better. And he knew and he was able to recognize that, especially, working, he's a cop, he works with other cops, like they all talk about stuff like that on the job. It's like, the big trucks that they buy and the debt that they're in and whatever, you know what I mean? And so he bought into it from the get-go. And I would just workshop things with him, and I kind of brought him in on the planning because he is essentially my target audience. And so I
Mm.
needed to know how he thought, and in order for me to market the way that I needed to market for my business.
I love it. Yeah. So, like, how would you talk to, right? And how would you coach a a couple, especially if they're wanting to work through this and she's wanting to start the business, the spouse may or may not really be supportive on it for whichever reason, but they both know that they don't want to be so reliant, upon this lifestyle and the debt. And they know that a business, they eventually want to go into all that, but they are struggling with that communication because that's a very big thing. And there's multiple things that can be going and why that is. But what would be the number one advice that you would give to a mom who, like you said, you owned up to the fact, like, yeah, I was alone in the beginning because I had to do the research. I did this. And it wasn't because your husband didn't want to be supportive. It was just because he was not available. And so what would be some advice if you were talking to a couple who was like that in the very similar situation, but maybe the spouse is not fully sold out to the idea?
Yeah, 100%. It literally comes down to asking questions and getting curious. Like my first thing is I would want to know, why is the spouse feeling resistance towards the other spouse's desire to, become an entrepreneur? Get to the root of that, because oftentimes it's really just rooted in fear, right? Fear of the unknown, fear of failure, fear of, it's going to be my sole responsibility to support this family for a period of time, and I don't know how long that's going to be. So it's really like, I think if you can kind of start to peel back the layers and figure out like what's really rooted in that resistance, because there have been a couple things, a couple times over the past 2 years where like I had an idea that would come up. It's like, oh, hey, like I'm gonna, invest this much money into this. And then, especially when it comes to money, that's usually where we find the most resistance from our partner, right? And, in case in point is the financial coaching academy that I was going to be a part of. There's not very many out there. There's like the Dave Ramsey one, which is his financial piece. There's the Financial Coach Academy, and I think there's a couple other like masterminds or whatever that are just like around financial coaching, but there's not very many out there. And so I did my research, but it was like a $2,500 investment. Like that's pretty substantial. And I remember, and it was in the very beginning, like I'm talking like the first like month or two that I told my husband, like, hey, I want to purchase this. And so our the way that we were able to kind of both be comfortable is, there's a little bit of compromises. Like we weren't just going to go ahead and get it right then and there. My husband was like, well, let's have you just work and start promoting yourself on Instagram. And if it's something that you still want to do and say, give yourself 4 months or 5 months, however long, then we know that this is going to be a good investment for you. So because I do, and he knows me because we've been together for 7 years. There have been many times in the past where I was trying to figure out something that I wanted to do. And then it just kind of like after a couple months of doing it, I was like, nah, I don't want to do that anymore. Right. So his whole thing is like, I don't want to drop the $2,500 and then you find out you don't want to do this anymore, kind of thing.
Yes. Oh my God. Yeah, because it's just, hey, it's a part of us learning ourselves and growing and changing and experimenting. And yeah, that can drive our spouses kind of crazy. Right. But it's like, we're trying the end goal, like you said, at the end of the day, you knew that this was something that you wanted to do, and aligning that desire and that passion to do that, and to at least, like you said, get curious, figure this out. And I think that's why like this discussion on planning your exit into mompreneurship is so important, because you need to give yourself that time period to mess up, to figure it out, and all the things in a safe way. And I feel like that's where a lot of women kind of we struggle, is because we take on way too much. Like we're raising the family and then we want to go all in, because especially when we want something and we decide it that's what it's doing. Like if there's hesitation, that's because there hasn't been a decision made. But when you know this is what you want and this is how it's going to be and this is what it is, there's no going back. And it's more because you're walking in that full alignment. And so that's where you get that hustle, right? To where you're like, your desire, and will you devote 2 years to do your research and all of the things, because you want to make sure you do this in a safe time frame, because you got your family that you're trying to gradually, you want to transition, so that way, to the best of your ability, they don't feel as much of the burden, right?
Right. Yeah. And I would definitely say, if there's, any women out there who are feeling that resistance from their spouse, where you want to make this transition and go into entrepreneurship, I would say the best question that you can ask your spouse is, what can I do to help make sure you feel comfortable with my decision as well? And then hopefully they're able to articulate to you what would help them feel comfortable. And then you go and do that. Right? Take control, right? Take control of your destiny and what you want to do. Because even though you're a partnership, right? You're still an individual who has desires and dreams and aspirations. And so you should still be able to attain those, but you just have to do it in terms of a partnership. And so sometimes that means a little bit of sacrifice on your part.
Yeah. And I would definitely say you have to be in a healthy place within, as best as you can be in a healthy place within your relationship. Because like you said, like finances is a very big issue a lot of the times with most couples, and why they're the divorce rate and all the things are so high. It's because it triggers the stress and all the emotional things and all of the things, and instead of working together to try to find a solution, we're working against each other, blaming, shaming, and all of the things. And so yeah, there's definitely a journey and there's definitely a timeline. And I really respect and appreciate you for keeping it real, because, like, yeah, 2 years, that sounds about right. And you started with minimum. Like, that was 2 years minimum. And I think that's what makes it you so successful, right? In actually now fully being able to live in this calling of, no, I am a financial coach. Yes, I do have my children. I run my business around my children's schedule, blah, blah, like, and fully embrace this identity now, right? Because you talked about identity loss, transitioning from your career to now fully being a mompreneur. Like, allowing yourself that time in that space gave you the freedom to embrace and fully take this on. And then also now you're not concerned about the finances, you're not worried about the bill. Yes, there's pressure to be able to produce an income, but it is from a desire instead of a desperation. And I feel like that's one of the struggles when we do not plan how we're going to do our business. And sometimes, plans are meant to go off the rails. Like, that's going to be another conversation we're going to have, because I know you went through some things. So yeah, that's going to be a whole nother conversation we're going to have, because their time is almost up. But yeah, like, it's important to really create a plan with that, and then have someone like a financial coach help guide you along that journey, and to help you with those pivots, reaffirm you when you guys are making progress, and if something needs to be like tweaked a little bit, or you got to be like, hey, like, kind of push them along more and be like, you need to, this is what you chose, and blah blah blah. Like, that's a benefit of having a financial coach too alongside you guys in the journey. And so again, thank you. I wish we could have had more time, but time has run out for us on today's episode, but that is okay. We're definitely going to be doing more of these, and I would love to hear from you guys. What were the biggest things that in today's conversation that you felt were really valuable for you in helping you kind of be better and more mindful with being intentional about your mompreneurship journey? And also let us know if you would love for us to do a financial planning into mompreneurship series to where we can really dive deep and collaborate on sharing some great valuable tips for you guys in a series version of our Plan and Chat episodes. So I don't know how do you feel about that one?
I feel great about that.
Right. Like, let's
I
do
love talking. I love talking business and money, man.
I mean, especially when it's rolling in, like
Yep.
what? Right. Let's break these like stigmas and false beliefs on talking business and money. Make it just a part of normal life. We can talk about our jobs. Why can't we talk about our businesses and money freely?
Yep.
You know, in a healthy way, not just boasting and making it rain. We don't do that.
Absolutely.
Right. So, can you let everybody know how they can connect with you and find you if they are interested in are ready to invest in booking a financial coach?
Yeah, absolutely. So I do have a free 15-minute consultation call for anybody who's interested. You can find me on Instagram. I'm at Blue Line Money Coach, and I have my link in there. Or you can just book something through my website at priority1fc.com. And while I do market myself towards law enforcement families, I do have non-law enforcement clients as well. So that's just mostly just so I can market myself. But I am open to working with anybody and everybody who wants, help with their finances.
Great. Well, you guys heard her. Those are the places you can find her. And I'll make sure to post all of the links and everything in the descriptions below so you guys can connect with her later. And you guys can check out on my website too, because as we continue to do videos and episodes, I'm going to have a tools and resources place to where you guys can find, connect with her and other people who I bring on for Plan and Chat, who can help you create a healthier and sustainable life. So thank you again, Rebecca, for hopping on and talking money and business with us today. And you guys, I hope you guys have a great rest of your self-care Saturday and take time to do some things for your self-care. Okay?
Awesome.
All right. Talk to you guys later.
Talk to you later.